Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog here, aka the Blue Blur, aka Blue Justice, and I am from the likes of the Mexi Toys videos here. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll present you our some sort of yet another version of Sonic the Hedgehog game we've decided to tackle through, except this time, as you can tell, originally though, we refused able to actually try out the standalone versions of those two separate games in particular, both of which are Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles respectively. However though, I feel like about the fact I'm actually going to be doing the exact same system as the forms of so many versions of some of these Mario games in the past. Like, for example, we've already done Super Mario All-Stars, and in addition to that, we also did manage to tackle through the original versions of the Mario Brothers trilogy for the NES, including the Lost Levels in particular. In addition to that though, so far we actually done Super Mario Advance 1, Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Brothers 3, but usually straight to the point though is about the fact I figure is about the perfect opportunity for me to able to actually tackle through Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version, because as far as I'm aware, I know you guys are probably thinking, didn't you already done Sonic the Hedgehog 3 before? Well, here's the thing. Back in 2017, which is about 7 years ago, we originally done Sonic 3 and Knuckles back in June events event 2017 to mark the celebrate of the release of Sonic Mania during that time. However though, during events event 2024, if you couldn't tell already, we're about to able to already celebrate the 30th anniversary of not only Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version, but as well as another game, which is of course Sonic & Knuckles, which we'll talk more about the forms of Sonic & Knuckles standalone version during at some point later down the road. So either way, and as far as you can definitely tell, this is the first ever Sonic game to able to feature a file selection screen. So because of this though, however though, unlike the forms of how it does it on Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which is essentially you do manage to able to have a lock-on technology with Sonic and Knuckles, with Sonic 3, you do able to actually access to 8 separate save files. However though, on Sonic 3 standalone version, as you can tell, you're only able to actually access to 6 separate files. So as a result though, and also as far as I'm aware, there is no playable Knuckles in the actual main story mode. Although there's only one particular mode exception to that though, but we'll talk more about that and during at some point until next weekend. Because as far as I'm aware, yeah, today's date of course there is the 2nd of November today, in some cases in 2024 today. So generally speaking, that was about the fact that after all, we've already manage able to finish up every single aspect of our Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 2 recently, and no matter what though, we cannot wait able to actually dive into Luigi's Mansion 3 at some point until next year, possibly during at some point on next year's Halloween if possible. And on top of all that stuff though, recently though, I can assure you about the fact that recently that Blaze the cat, she recently decided able to actually tackle through the next SpongeBob SquarePants game. And that's what it appears to be this time, which appears to be the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game specifically for the PlayStation 2. Because as far as I'm aware, that particular moment is about the fact that as far as she already talked about this, is that obviously they're just trying to able to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie itself. So because of that though, despite the fact that she already mentions about the fact that the video game counterparts did originally came out first, whilst the movie came out and during at some point in November. So yeah, it's a perfect opportunity we can able to actually do those two games for now, to able to actually celebrate the, well, one of those games for the 30th anniversary since in 1994, and then in the other game, which appears to be celebrating its 20th anniversary along with the movie itself. So because of that though, yeah, there's nothing else I can really say about it, aside from the fact that if you couldn't tell already, is about the fact that much like in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, back in June events in 2017, as you can tell, we're only going to be experiencing Sonic and Tails playthrough, because as far as I'm aware, like I said before, is about the fact that there is no way we can able to play as Knuckles in this particular standalone version of Sonic 3, apart from one particular mode exception, which again, we'll save that particular topic for, you know, specifically for next Sunday in particular. So But as you can see, we ended up on the first special stage in Sonic 3 standalone version, and basically you have to simply collect those blue spheres, and then once you collect all of the blue spheres, then the Chaos Emerald is yours. However, though, you do need to avoid the red spheres, so just ensure for the fact that if you dare touch one of those red spheres, obviously though you get kicked out of the special stage, and you got to find one of those giant rings in one of those hidden areas and during certain zones. So as a result though, yeah, this is before when, you know, not only Sonic and Knuckles standalone version exists, but as well as the forms of Sonic Mania as well, and also technically Sonic Superstars as well, which, speaking of which though, is about the fact that we'll talk more about the forms of Sonic Mania and Sonic Superstars, and during at some point until 2025 if possible, because, well, straight to the point though is about the fact that I'm pretty sure we've only got about a couple of days left now until whenever we move on to the next year, which appears to be 2025. So as a result though, yeah, I'm so super excited about it, and also I feel a little bit optimistic about it at the exact same time, although I'll save that particular topic in a later time. So for now, let's go ahead and pop over to this bonus game right here, which appears to be this little gumball machine that you can only find in Journey Forms of Sonic 3 standalone version by simply trying to able to collect around 50 rings, and you have to find a checkpoint, and as a result, that way you can able to actually access the gumball machine. So either way though, now that's not to say about the fact that we would like to able to show off the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version playthrough this time, but it's also about the fact that we would like to point things out for some differences in between both Sonic 3 standalone or Sonic 3 and Knuckles, because as you can tell, as soon as you're able to get into the mid-boss, if you couldn't tell, we're able to actually hear a different background music, which almost inspires by Michael Jackson himself. So because of this though, yeah, it seems kind of cool and interesting at the same time. Although, here's the thing though, in regards to the forms of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, as far as the game itself is concerned, well, generally speaking, I was about the fact that Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was originally going to be a ginormous adventure when it comes to the forms of him releasing on the Mega Drive / Sega Genesis. However though, and that's what appears to be about the fact that the game itself has been split into two halves, which is the forms of not only Sonic 3 standalone version, as well as Sonic and Knuckles, that it does feature a unique lock-on technology on top of the cartridge. However though, the reason why these two games has been split into halves, or specifically two parts in particular, and that's so much so is probably because of the promotion of the McDonald's Happy Meal, and on top of all that stuff though, it's most likely because the time constraints or the actual deadline as far as anything else goes basically. So either way though, now, as far as I'm aware, is about the fact that obviously though, since I'm the master at Sonic games of course, obviously though, I will try to able to get every single Chaos Emeralds in this particular run. So this means about the fact that, well, only 7 Chaos Emeralds will be a manageable way when it comes to 100% in the game already. And straight to the point though, is about the fact that I can assure to you about the fact that we have to go through about 6 zones in particular, as opposed to like 14 zones from the likes of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, as far as I'm aware. So this means is about the fact that the uploading schedules department, in regards to the forms of Sonic 3 standalone version, alongside with Sonic and Knuckles if possible, this particular playthrough is going to be pretty short, especially concerning for the fact that, well, generally speaking though, in regards to the forms of the uploading schedules for this game in particular, it's most likely going to take place in a weekends department, because we were originally decided able to actually tackle through Sonic Generations on the 3DS just before we dive into Sonic X Shadow Generations at some point, but obviously that was about the fact that we just want to get these recording sessions out of the way before anything else happens, especially concerning for the fact that, well, like I stated before, is about the fact that we've only got about a couple of days left now until 2024 is about to wrap up before we move on to a brand new year, as I stated before. But let's not get ahead of ourselves at this point right now, because so far we've actually got ourselves 2 Chaos Emeralds so far, despite the fact it's not clearly visible, but that's just mainly because, well, similar to the forms of how it does in our playthrough of Sonic 3D Fleeky's Island, specifically the Mega Drive / Sega Genesis version, I'm going to be playing this game through the likes of the Sega Mega Drive Ultimate Collection, specifically the PlayStation 3 version in particular, so just so I'm sure for the fact that you can clearly know why, that the quality itself looks a lot more detailed as far as anything else is concerned. Well, mind you about the fact that I was expecting to try and set the game as in 4.3 aspect ratio or 4:3 aspect ratio, but I digress. So here's that particular theme I was talking about earlier, and as a result, we're going to be able to actually end up in the exact same mini boss fights as before, except this time we can now hear the original version of that particular mini boss theme, which is almost inspired by Michael Jackson himself. But as a result though, yeah, I have no idea why about the fact that the Origins version on Sonic 3 and Knuckles usually decides able to replace certain musical tracks specifically for quite a number of things here and there, which again, we'll talk more about that probably at some point until tomorrow if possible. So either way though, but I will admit though right away is about the fact that unlike in Sonic Origins though, that basically though we did somehow indeed manage to able to actually tackle through 3 zones per video in regards to the forms of Sonic 3 and Knuckles portion. But here's the thing though, I'm actually going to be going into 2 zones this time per video, just to ensure for the fact that we want to able to actually talk about some quite a number of things here and there before we get into any details specifically though, because as far as I'm aware it's about the fact that hopefully we'll hear more about the forms of some news, updates, or anything else potentially speaking of until specifically on the 5th of November for presumably speaking of for the next financial results for Nintendo Switch sales numbers as far as I'm aware, not only for the actual hardware but as well as the forms of games software lineup as far as this is concerned. But as I said before, and I suppose about the fact that Maxi has technically already mentioned about this ever since in the final video of Luigi's Mansion 2, or Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon if you lived in North America, if that seems to be the case. Basically though is about the fact I don't think it's possible we can able to actually hear about some sales numbers in regards to the forms of Super Mario Party Jamboree, including Mario Luigi Brothership, but that's not going to be specifically until at some point in February next year that we can definitely hear more about the forms of the actual sales numbers with both of those games in particular. I'm just going to say that right about now. So anyway though, also as far as I'm aware is about the fact that we were originally decided able to actually just to realize about the fact that we can expect able to try to do Sonic Generations for the 3DS and Journey forms have been this particular week as far as I'm aware, but like I said as before, it's about the fact that maybe it's probably best if we decided able to actually wrap things up every single aspect in terms of, well, the majority of the Sega Mega Drive / Sega Genesis kind of Sonic games first, not including the forms of Sonic compilation by the way, in addition to Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine in addition to that as well. That's just mainly because, well, for one thing, for Sonic compilation game as far as I'm concerned, for the Mega Drive / Sega Genesis, basically it does manage to only contains 3 games in particular, which appears to be Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, and there's no sign of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, in addition to the forms of just Sonic 3 standalone version, as well as Sonic and Knuckles standalone version, and on top of all that stuff, that there's no Sonic CD on that particular compilation, because you know, Sonic CD was going to be a Mega CD kind of game, so this means it heavily utilizes CDs rather than cartridges, so makes sense for the sake of the forms of that particular context anyway. So anyway, so now here we go on to the 4th special stage right here, so I can easily just try to able to actually complete these kinds of special stages no problem, apart from the fact that if I do mess it up though, I do need to find yet another big ring somewhere in Journey forms within certain zones later down the road, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, because as far as I'm aware is about the fact that I just want to get these special stages out of the way, and in addition to that though, I was expecting to try to able to actually guarantee to get myself the perfect score for likely or so for able to not only obtain all of the rings in the actual special stage, but it's also about the fact that you do need to able to find every single blue sphere for that matter. But we've already done that particular perfect award kind of thing for only for one time specifically in special stage 1, but that's just mainly because at this point in time I can just try to able to beat this game within about few minutes quicker as far as anything else is concerned. Mind you about the fact that during the forms of how Sonic 3 itself is usually structured, well, basically though, it plays pretty similar to Sonic 2, except the fact that, well, the game introduces to ourselves quite a number of things here and there. Like, for instance, this is the first ever Sonic game to able to actually feature elemental shields, which are the Flame Shield, Bubble Shield, and the Electric Shield, my personal favorite, especially concerning for the fact that not only does it protect you from specific stuff and all that stuff, but it's also about the fact that it does manage to contain different attributes, like specifically specific abilities. Like, for example, with the forms of the Electric Shield that we somehow used not too while ago, and there's the Bubble Shield right here, as we somehow equipped right now, basically you can able to actually perform a bit of a butt bounce kind of technique. Yeah, that was before when Pac-Man used that technique for the likes of Pac-Man World 1, 2, and 3 during that time, and also as you can tell about the fact that we somehow immediately change into the Flame Shield, which not only you can able to actually perform a flammable dash, so that way you can able to actually just give yourselves the forms of specific distance up ahead, but it's also worth noting for is about the fact that it does manage to protect you from specific situations. Like, for instance, if you do manage to able to still have yourselves the Flame Shield with you, it actually protects you from flammable damage. And on top of all that stuff though, oh my god, what the heck is going on with that sound? Although I will admit though right away, I do apologize for that particular very unexpected buzzing sound in the background, but that's just mainly because, well, as I said this before, I'm playing this on the Sega Mega Drive Ultimate Collection, if you couldn't tell, because for whatever reason, in Journey Phones have been Sega Mega Drive Classics compilation for PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch in general, for some odd reason is about the fact that Sonic 3, in addition to Sonic & Knuckles, was not included on that particular compilation for some odd reason. I'm guessing it's probably because of the forms of the licensing issues, in regards to the forms of stuff relates to Michael Jackson, but usually that'll be a topic for a later time, because for now, we've already taken care of the first boss in the game already, specifically in the Sonic 3 standalone version, so either way though, and there we go, that pretty much does it for Angel Island Zone. So either way though, not too shabby for the zone itself, it's just about the fact that you do need to watch out for that particular bridge section right here, especially concerning for the fact that, well, if you fell, then you do die. However, as you can tell, if you time your jump perfectly, while Knuckles did manage to able to step onto the switch, he can able to actually just to get back onto the actual familiar arena, but as you can tell, the invisible wall stops us from able to actually get in contact with Knuckles, so instead we immediately jump into the second zone in Sonic 3's standalone version. That's what appears to be, well, Hydro City Zone, which, conveniently enough, that particular zone will brought back in Journey Phones have been, well, Sonic Mania. So as a result though, and I could also say applies with the forms have been Angel Island Zone, despite the fact in Sonic Mania Plus that it was only for specifically for about a few minutes to able to explore into Angel Island Zone, especially noticeable it's only exclusive onto Encore mode, for I've noticed. Well, despite the fact I do need to do a redo let's play of that game after all, especially now we've actually got every single DLC as far as this is concerned, but then again though, that particular topic can't wait during at some point until, you know, 2025, because, well, I don't think it's possible we can able to do the redo let's play of Sonic Mania anytime soon, especially considering for the fact that, as I said this before, 2024 is almost approaching towards the ending conclusion, so, but I will admit it though right away, I do honestly enjoy 2024 for what it is, but that particular topic can't wait though, probably at some point by the end of that particular year, perhaps. So anyways though, so yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's about the fact that obviously though, since as you can tell, we've accidentally managed to able to obtain the Flame Shield, so you know what that means, I suppose no matter what though. I missed the bonus game! Whatever. I guess beggars can't be choosers, I guess. So anyway, so unfortunately though, since if you couldn't tell, if you did manage to able to equip the Flame Shield alongside with the forms of the Electric Shield, and if you do manage to able to go into the underwater segment right here, it will get rid of your Elemental Shield. Apart from one, and that's what appears to be the Bubble Shield, which not only about the fact that you can able to do a bit of a butt bounce kind of syndrome or something, but it's also about the fact that you can able to survive in underwater, which as as a result, thankfully with the bubble shield, you can able to actually just, well, don't drown basically. Apart from Tails, of course, because as far as I'm aware, much like in Sonic 2, Tails does not receive any of those shield power-ups or anything else like that while he decides to join in with you. So that might be something, I suppose, to able to notice something like that particular familiar premise and stuff like that. So anyway, so it may look like about the fact that we've almost done with the special stages in Sonic 3's standalone version already, because, well, straight to the point though is about the fact that, well, we pretty much know about the layouts quite frequently. However though, it wasn't until whatever we get around on doing Sonic & Knuckles Special Stages standalone version is expected to become a lot more tougher, which as a result though, because obviously though, as I stated before, is about the fact that Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was originally going to be a one ginormous adventure for the Sega Mega Drive / Sega Genesis, but as you probably already know, that the game itself has been split into two separate games, both of which are Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, probably because of the phones the deadline, and on top of all that stuff though, thanks to the their promotion to the McDonald's Happy Meal back in 1994, and straight to the point though, I honestly have no idea why they come for that particular decision, but regardless of everything else though, is about the fact I still managed able to enjoy not only Sonic 3's standalone version, but as well as Sonic & Knuckles, and also combine these two games together and become the true Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which is of course Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, because I still classify the saying about the fact that Sonic 3 and Knuckles is easily one of my favorite Sonic games that I've ever played, and it's also one of the best ever Sonic games of all time, which as a result, that speaks for a lot of Sonic fans out there, myself included. Especially concerning for the fact that, usually relatively speaking of, the first time I've ever experienced Sonic 3's standalone version, much like any other Sonic games on the Mega Drive / Sega Genesis, is thanks to the forms of the Sonic Mega Collection for the Nintendo GameCube, so naturally speaking of, it's about the fact that that was my, first time experiencing the game back in the day. However though, there was one particular zone I somehow managed to get stuck on for the longest time, but thankfully though, the more I'm grown older, it doesn't become a lot more of an issue to me though. But regardless of everything else though, that's as far as I can really think about it. And straight to the point though, is about the fact that I do remember back in 2012 for some time, I did attempt to able to do the, a Let's Play of this game, specifically the Sonic 3 standalone version, back in sometime in 2012, along the same time as with the films of just around when we did done the, original playthroughs of Sonic 2, alongside with the films of Sonic 1 back in the day in 2012, but of course, as you already know, well there's something different. We actually got ourselves a yellow spring, as opposed to the actual 1-up box, which I get the strong sense of feeling, if you dare manage able to touch the yellow spring, it just knocks you back. So because of that though, we have to watch out for that at all costs. In addition to that though, apparently there was actually a spike somewhere while being chased by the phones that shifting wall, so as a result though, yeah, because relatively speaking though, unlike in Sonic 3 and Knuckles' counterpart of this level, that some obstacles have been altered slightly, or in some cases removed entirely, so either way though, chances are though, you get the idea what I'm talking about, after likely trying to able to be comparing the vanilla version, or should I say the standalone version of Sonic 3, in comparison to the forms of, you know, the Sonic, oh my god, that was close. I was assuming about the fact that that stupid knockback was a thing, and on top of that, that almost immediately decided able to let me force to go into the red spring, and if I dare manage able to get fluke off, this means I have to go all that particular climbathon all over again, which it won't be that fun, especially concerning for the fact that, well, usually this entire stage takes place in underwater and all that stuff. So, and also as far as I'm aware, I still really do enjoy the soundtrack in Sonic 3's standalone version, because, you know, I still managed to classify for saying I can able to replay through Sonic 3 and Knuckles every single time, not only for the likes of the forms of certain Sonic compilation games ranging from Sonic Mega Collection, in addition to the Plus counterpart with the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, as well as the forms of the Xbox Live Arcade version, if you do manage able to download not only Sonic 3 standalone version, but as well as Sonic & Knuckles standalone version on the Xbox Live Arcade. Well, it's kind of unfortunate that about the fact that those two games in particular is no longer available for the Xbox 360, especially concerning for the fact that those games have recently been delisted ever since around 2 years ago due to the forms of the existence of Sonic Origins, which I understand that, and it's also worth noting for us about the fact that, well, straight to the point though, it is seriously, it's very unfortunate we can no longer able to actually access to buying DLC for Sonic 06 anymore, specifically on the Xbox 360 version, because we can still technically able to actually access to it on the PlayStation 3, specifically not only in Japan, but as well as the European version as well. I mean, after all, I'm a huge die-hard Sonic fan after all, but still. Regardless of everything else though, it's just about the fact that it's there for the sake of bragging rights, I guess, or just anything else in general. I know for the fact it has been about quite a while since I actually have mentioned something relates to not only for the Xbox 360, but as well as the PlayStation 3 as well, but that's just mainly because at this point in time, well, before I get into more details about other stuff worth noting for, well, as a matter of fact though, we've only got about 5 more days to go until Mario Luigi Brothership is going to be releasing for the Nintendo Switch. So I'm still basically excited for it, and I cannot wait to able to actually experience the game while we're still waiting for Christmas during around that time. So that way, that'll be a double the excitement as far as everything else is about to come up. So either way though, and also as far as I'm aware, is about the fact that, well, there is also another thing is worth noting for in regards to the forms of other Sonic compilation games that does manage to feature not only Sonic 3 standalone version, but as well as the forms of Sonic & Knuckles standalone version, and that's what appears to be not only Sonic Jam, and there's also with the forms of Sonic & Knuckles collection for PC in 1997, which ironically enough, that particular version did came out the exact same year as in Sonic Jam, but it was actually on a different system, because as far as I'm aware, Sonic Jam was originally released on the Sega Saturn, and in addition to that though, Sonic & Knuckles collection did only came out on PC, which does manage to feature not only Sonic 3 standalone version, but as well as Sonic & Knuckles standalone version, and of course Sonic 3 & Knuckles. So as a result though, but there are some slight changes here and there, like specifically the music soundtrack. So as a result though, that's as far as I can try to explain about it. Well, mind you, I probably won't be able to actually decide able to do that playthrough for me anyway. Well, that's just mainly because, well, I don't seem able to have that particular compilation, and as far as I'm aware, I don't think it's possible you can able to actually play Sonic & Knuckles collection these days now, especially concerning for the fact that we've moved on to modern laptops or anything else like that. Understandably so, but regardless of anything else though, it still looks quite impressive for its time back in 1997 regardless, alongside with the forms of Final Fantasy VII, in addition to the forms of Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back, in addition to that though, among all others as well, ranging from Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and much, much more. So even then, there's so much more I can probably think about in regards of looking back in 1997 regardless, but either way though, that'll be a topic for a later time. So either way though, so as you can tell, we've somehow got one more Chaos Emerald left, and similar to the forms of how it does it in Sonic 3 & Knuckles playthrough back in 2017, I'm actually going to be going for those specific giant rings in the exact same order. Although, we did somehow accidentally miss one of them in Journey Evolves within Alternative Pathways, in Journey Evolves within Act 1 in Hydro City Zone, but it doesn't really bother me onto the grand scheme of things or anything else like that, because after all, I played this game so many times in the past, because I can't help it for myself about the fact that how good Sonic 3 or Sonic 3 & Knuckles did actually became one of the best Sonic games ever made. So, among all others as well, including Sonic Adventure 2, and also Sonic Mania, and as well as nowadays with Sonic X Shadow Generations, thanks to the forms of the existence of Shadow Generations, which there's another thing I totally forgot to mention about, and that's what appears to be something related to Sonic Stadium, that particular website they did manage to able to discuss upon news, updates, and anything else like that. Apparently though, SonicStadium.com also receives the game a, well, let's just say 5 red stars out of 5, or should I say the 5 red star rings out of 5, and colonists essential. So because of that though, indeed, it is essential indeed, especially concerning for the fact that, well, it's kind of hard for me to come back into Sonic Colors Ultimate these days, because I will admit it though right away, while looking back on it though, it still has some technical issues, and it still hasn't been patched out ever since then. So I'm very pleased to say about the fact that Sonic X Shadow Generations is receiving very, very well, and potentially speaking out to make matters even better, then obviously that was about the fact that the Switch version of Sonic Generations, including Shadow Generations, runs really, really dang well. Although, as we expected though, much like the forms of how it does it on some Sonic Switch games throughout the years, ranging from Sonic Forces, Team Sonic Racing, Sonic Colors Ultimate, and Sonic Frontiers, the Switch version of Sonic Generations, including Shadow Generations, are only locked out behind the 30 frames per second kind of thing. So, although we'll talk more details about that particular 30 frames per second comparison with the 60 frames per second during at some point until tomorrow, because for now, we somehow gathered every single chaos symbols in this particular point right there. And just like before, ever since in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, basically though, if you gather 50 rings, and basically though, you now have the option to able to actually either not turn into Supersonic, or you can potentially try to have the option to turn into Supersonic, and to trigger it though, you simply try to able to press the jump button twice, and as a result though, you can able to actually miraculously turn into Supersonic after all, which will continue that tradition for the future classic Sonic games. Specifically though, Sonic 4 Episode 1 as well as Episode 2, and also Sonic Mania, and also Sonic Superstars, and much more really. So, except for Sonic Advance games, because obviously though, it's obviously locked out behind final bosses in particular, or the final boss event only, I can possibly understand with the forms of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, but either way though, let's just go ahead and deal with this particular boss right here, with the simple, easy victory with Supersonic in hand, and yeah, that pretty much does it for Hydro City Zone. So with that being said folks, let's go ahead and end things off this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version. Is that we're going on to the next zone, which appears to be Marble Garden Zone. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later fellas.